somebody must have come to me and said, how would you like to write Candy? You know, when they asked me about it, I began to make mental lists of the positive and the negative. You get to go to Italy, you get to live in Rome for some months, eat great food, see beautiful girls, live in a wonderful hotel, which was the Excelsior in its time. You get to work with an incredible amount of interesting people. Half of them were horrified by it. Half of them were thrilled. And who knows, with luck, you might have a good picture out of it, and it could take you places. The book is very funny, but it hasn't got the big pieces that a movie better have. You know, what do you remember of a film a week or a month after you've seen it, or a year? Sometimes you don't remember anything. Sometimes you remember the most appalling detail. It's interesting. I think it's sort of like going on a series of blind dates. And you never know which movie you're going to fall in love with or which you never want to see again. All films, I mean, when you start out, somebody has to write a script. They all are so studded with landmines to make it more difficult, to make everything more difficult, if not impossible. And if you can figure out what those landmines are before they blow you up, then you can be in good shape.
Wait for me, boys! Wait for the old man!
Oh, well, everything about Candy was a landmine. The point, of course, of films like that is you want to make it as dirty as possible without causing anybody in the audience to say, this is too dirty.
She want me?
And, of course, you hope to make it funny.
This isn't some godforsaken border town where you can just go about as you please and bother innocent people and do Mexican things.
It is interesting about semi-pornographic art. I mean, we tend to forget when we're making suggestive art that the whole point of beautiful starlets is to excite the male members, play on words intended, in the audience. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. So to be offended by that stuff is stupid. I was also given a number of actors. That was a given. I didn't have to be told that the point was to build scenes that were interesting for them.
I suppose, young lady, you have an excellent reason for being caught in the bed of a critically injured patient, your half-naked body writhing and twisting, held in the grip of an insane and shameless passion.
Because every time a new actor was attached, the new actor would bring a couple of actors in.
Pleasant dreams, Mr. Moneybag. Same to you, Mr. Sawbones. Thank you, Mr. Fundraiser. Don't mention it, Mr. Bloodsucker.
I was just there writing scenes. You know, at one point, I was only 11 pages ahead of them. I would go and knock out 5 to 10 pages and give it to the producers, and then they would go away and do something with them. The film got made because Brando and Burton were there. And they were there because they were friends of Christian Marquand and had a great affection for him, as did I. So we were all working for someone we really liked. His sister was a well-known editor. His brother was an actor. His father was a very weird character. I'm not quite sure what his nominal profession was, but he showed up a lot, Christian's father. He showed up mostly when new young girls were there taking their clothes off. I mean, Christian, I had no idea before I went to Rome for this how famous Christian was. I thought, well, he's just this weird actor guy. But in fact, Christian was a hero of the French resistance. I'm not sure how his heroism came, whether he killed people or blew up things. It was something big, because I talked to people afterwards, and they didn't really want to get into detail. So he was a hero of the French, and then he was a big movie star. I mean, he was the male star of And God Created Women, which took France by storm. And wherever we went, and we went to a lot of places in Paris, we went to a lot of restaurants, and we went to a lot of bars, everybody knew him. Everyone would regale him. Well, lots of young girls came around, and some of them were really interesting, including Ava. She was nervous about everything. I mean, she wasn't a highly sophisticated, very experienced young actress. She was just this incredibly hot, toothsome babe from the magic islands of Scandinavia. She was sophisticated enough to do what she had to do. I don't think she got most of the dirty jokes. It wasn't in her makeup to understand sophisticated filth.
I beg your pardon?
Lie down. We're going to begin to breathe.
There was a sort of innocence about her that filtered all that stuff out. She would ask about scenes, and her questions were close to being hilarious, I thought. She kept asking me, we don't have to do the number thing, do we? I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And I finally said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And she said, the number thing, the 69. I said, oh, the number thing. No, we won't do the number scene.
Ooh.
I quote a lot. I throw in to my dialogue, which can use a little pumping up who's can't. And I tend to try to make people think I'm smarter than I am by quoting a lot of Shakespeare and other things and putting it into and Richard, of course, really liked that.
Life, which burned and bled in the triumph of my dream-dim days, where I stood steaming brightly in the sleep-spun, sight-stunned glimmer of that eagle-crested dream.
The poem was a parody of Dylan Thomas. That's what it is. When you're listening to this poem that Burton does a very good job of dramatizing, it's really bad Dylan Thomas, and I'm proud of the badness of it.
Don't you read poetry?
I don't have time for poetry. I'm in the social sciences, not the humanities.
It was like all the actors were asked not only to do some fairly seedy physical stuff, but to speak some unnatural dialogue. And they all did. I think they all did it very well. I think they all liked the kind of dirty stuff of it.
When were you examined last?
At school a month ago.
No, I mean by a physician.
Yes.
Well, did he tell you your entire lumbar region was out of line?
No.
Again, you hope that the actor that you've written a specific, difficult piece for will just laugh and say, let's do it, and move right ahead, which Jimmy did. I mean, I was worried about the rather lengthy doctor speech.
If I should hiccup, I would put a dent in the patient's speech center that would leave him not only incapable of pronouncing the letters L, R, D, Y, and F, but make him absolutely incapable of digit dialing.
And we were shooting in the hospital that my father had died in, so it was particularly edgy for me, because I'd spent an awful week there while he was dying and then finally died. The speech I wrote for Jimmy, the Mad Doctor speech, was right out of my experience there. It was like a bad dream, all of it. Marlon was one of those guys who was always threatening you with some kind of meaningless, funny little thing. You know, he was working all sorts of nefarious schemes to make life difficult for the rest of us. Because that's the way guys like Marlon are. They're continually poking you in the ribs, seeing if you'll cry or laugh.
Gosh. Gosh isn't the half of it.
Did he write you some letters after you finished Candy?
I have some letters, but he didn't write them to me. I stole them.
Who'd you steal them from?
I stole them from a desk at a studio. I'm not sure why I stole them. Well, I know why I stole them, because Marlon's name was on them. I wanted to read them. The whole film was made at Deer Film, which is a little studio in the center of Rome. It was a very comfortable studio. You know, it was small, and it had, I'm trying to remember how many stages, I think 3 maybe. It was not large, but this little studio, Deer Film, in the middle of everything, with its own restaurant, too. There were a number of producers on the film, including Christian's great and good friend, Peter Zoreff. And we always used to have lunch together, Marquand and Zoreff and me and a couple others. Christian put down Peter a lot, verbally and in any other way that he could get away with. And on this particular day, he chose, Peter said something, and Christian reached across the table and slapped him in the face, which is an incredibly rude thing to do. And I said, do me a favor and don't do that anymore. So he reached across the table and slapped Zoreff again, and I said, no, I mean it, you mustn't do that. And I picked up my table knife, and he said, what are you going to do, stab me? And I said, only if I can get away with it, so we'll see. And I said, but don't hit Peter again, because it's really irksome. So he raised his hand, and I raised mine with the knife in it. And Peter was right over here, and Christian reached and swung, and he impaled his hand on the knife.
Cheeseburger! Bring out that first aid equipment!
And Christian started laughing. He thought it was funny. Well, he thought it might be funny. And he started with a low laugh, and as the blood went everywhere, he laughed harder. And then the blood went to a few embarrassing places, like people's pants, in their actual food on their plate. And he was, by that time, hysterical. I was thinking, I wish Brandon was here. If this wouldn't make him laugh, well, maybe we could start over. So Christian laughed himself out. And I thought, this is a great man that if you stab him, put a hole in a part of his body, and he laughs, he must be listening to music that we can't hear. I only saw the film once in a screening room. This was like a first showing, a lot of friends. The reaction was so depressing. I thought, I'm obviously through. No one is going to ask me ever to write a film again, or to be in one, or possibly even to watch one. I better go home and think about doing something else. And I did. But I have never had a reaction like that to anything. I mean, it was as though somebody just said to them, the Chechens have just invaded the theater. It was really depressing.
Could anyone help me?
Mama.
I'm looking for Dr. Krankheit.
And people filed out of the theater to go home without saying goodbye to anyone, mostly not to me. I thought, I wish it had been better. And hand in hand with that goes, yes, I wish it were a better movie. I wish I'd written a better screenplay. And maybe if we had contemporary actors who have shown up in the last 10 years, particularly comedy actors, male and female, it could be a vastly different experience.